Today's video is sponsored by Squarespace. So it's been a while since I've done a video sharing just like a breakdown of the kit that I use for film photography. I've had a lot of people asking specific questions in videos recently or sending me messages. So I thought it'd be fun to do this video sharing just like the cameras, lenses, and kind of like essential accessories that I use and that I'll be using moving forward. So I'm gonna share a large format kit and medium format. Those are the two that I'm working with. Not really shooting much 35mm nowadays. And then also going to talk about tripod, backpack, and some other smaller items as well. And I do just wanna say before we get into this, the reality is there's so many options to choose from. Most cameras are good. Most are gonna be able to do the job. I think it all comes down to just like picking whichever ones suit you best. So first up, we'll talk about medium format, and to no surprise, I am working with the Pentax 6x7. I had the 672 for quite a long time, but I did a video on the channel comparing the two, and after making that video, I ended up switching to the older model. The price difference between the two was just so large at the time. It still is, quite a difference, and that's what really made me choose the older model, because at the end of the day, it still gets the job done just fine. The one I'm working with has the AE finder. This actually has the focusing screen from the 672 installed. The previous owner did it. I don't know how he did it, but it is quite a bit brighter. And then I actually found the prisms on these to be quite a bit nicer to look through compared to the newer model. For some reason in the 672, it almost seems like you're looking kind of down through this tunnel. So the combination of this with that brighter screen makes composing and focusing really nice with this camera. The only thing that I prefer about the 672 compared to this one is the fact that that camera has like automatic program mode. So you can shoot in like an aperture priority mode with exposure compensation. And when you do that, the camera actually selects like half speed, shutter speed adjustments. So you can really kind of like fine tune your exposure. Whereas with this one, obviously, it's just full stop increments. So if you want to fine tune anything on the older model, you have to use the half stops on the lens, which is not as nice in my opinion, at least. So not like a huge deal, but that is kind of the one thing that I preferred about the 672 compared to this older version. When it comes to lenses for the Pentax, first up, to no surprise as well, it is the 105mm 2.4. This is obviously a classic lens for the system, and one that I bought for environmental portrait work. Obviously the speed of it, the shallow depth of field has such a unique look. This is just one that I've been very happy with. I don't use it that often for like general walk around work. It's a little bit too long for my taste, but for environmental portrait stuff, it's a classic. This is one that I'll never get rid of. Second prime I own is not a Pentax lens, but a Schneider 80mm f2.8, and this is from the Rollei SLX 6x6 system. And I had someone actually custom make this for me with the Pentax mount. This is something that's becoming quite popular with these Rollei lenses. And I did a video about this not too long ago. I'll link to it below. But this has been really nice just because, like the 105, it's pretty fast, 2.8, a little bit wider. And I bought this kind of as a complement to the 105, also to use for some like environmental portrait work. But I have used it for some landscape stuff, and it's also been pretty impressive for that as well. So this is a nice alternative to Pentax's 75mm 2.8, which is becoming quite expensive. This one you can make for a lot cheaper than that. And then the last lens that I own is this beast of a lens. This is Pentax's 55 to 100 f4.5 zoom. And this has actually been very, very impressive. So originally I was looking for a 55mm f4. I wanted to go a little bit wider than I normally shoot just for some landscape stuff. And when I was doing that research, I came across this lens online. This was released, I think, in 1998, so it's one of the last lenses Pentax made. But it got amazing reviews. A lot of people saying it's just as sharp as the primes, and then obviously it gives you a really nice range, kind of like an all-in-one, 55 to 100. So far using this, I've been really impressed. Optically, super sharp, very nice results from this lens. And another kind of big selling feature is the fact that it stops down to f32 compared to the primes, which go to f22. So for landscape work, it gives you a little bit more flexibility. The only downside is This thing is massive. It also weighs a lot. That was one of the complaints. I usually ignore a lot of like nitpicky things online when people are talking about camera gear, only because I'm like really not that fussy. But this lives up to what everyone is saying. It really is huge. When you mount this to the camera, it increases the size and the weight a ton. And it is definitely not something personally that I would buy to like mount on the camera for the day and like use as a walk around lens. It's just way too big. But on a tripod for landscape stuff, you could buy this one lens and it could cover almost everything. Okay, so next up is this little focusing unit. This is a Pentax accessory, and this is something that I use all the time. So basically it mounts to the viewfinder and then it flips down when you want to use it, has an adjustable diopter, and increases magnification right into the center of the viewfinder, which, you know, when you're shooting with a 105 2.4 or something like this 80mm 2.8, it really helps you nail critical focus, because with these lenses, without something like this, I found it can be really easy to miss focus because the depth of field is so shallow. Only downside with this, I think these are getting actually quite pricey. And then from like a usability standpoint, it flips up, which is a great idea. But when it's up like that and you're trying to frame, it's pressing against your forehead. So almost always you get these like smears and streaks on the glass itself. So I'll usually just like mount this and then take it off, and it takes a little bit more time, but it's not that much of a pain. Okay, the last accessory for the Pentax is this L bracket setup. And this is something that a lot of you have asked me about. So I am using a tripod plate from Kirk and an L bracket from Kirk. And this isn't the original Pentax 6.7 L bracket. They're impossible to find nowadays. And when you do, they're usually quite expensive. So this is just the Arca Swiss plate for the Pentax from Kirk. Super solid, pretty simple and straightforward. But this is an L bracket they make, which is called, I think, the Universal Large L bracket. And just has this little quick release system on the bottom. So you mount your camera in with the plate. Let's see if I can do this awkwardly here. And then it gives you Arca Swiss plate on the bottom. And obviously now you have an L bracket. And it actually surprisingly fits this camera well and is great if you're shooting on a tripod. Portrait orientation, just to keep the center of the camera lined up nice, rather than if you're just mounted and you're kind of tilting this off the side of your tripod. So a lot more stable this way. And then actually as well, I'll leave this mounted sometimes because this almost acts as like a handle. It's quite nice. So this has been like a good alternative. If you're looking for an L bracket system for your 6.7, I would recommend this combo. I'll put a link below to both of these. Okay, so we'll jump back into this video in a second. We just got to take a quick break to talk about the sponsor today, which is Squarespace. So if you're a photographer, a website is an incredibly important tool, not to only showcase your work to others, but it can also be great for structuring and previewing and planning out projects. So one of the things I love, they have all sorts of different templates, really clean, simple, professional looking, but they're also incredibly easy to use. I love that you can just click and drag to reorder photos and move them around. And then you can even make things like an online shop if you want to sell prints or photo books, other things like that. So check out squarespace.com. You can sign up for a free trial, you can test it out. And when you're ready to launch, you can use my link below to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or a domain. Okay, so that brings us to the large format setup. And if you've watched any of my recent videos, you've probably seen this camera. This is the Horseman 45 FA. And I have absolutely loved this thing. Definitely my favorite 4x5 that I've shot with, and one that I'll stick with for a long time. It just really fits the work that I do well. Obviously, it's super compact, so you can fit this in a camera bag with lots of accessories and room to spare. And then it's just really, really solid. So just drop down the front bed, clicks into place. Front standard just pulls out. And then everything kind of zeroes out and locks in really nice. Even things like the front rise on it is geared up and down, so just really smooth and precise. You know, things like front tilt just snap back into place when they're zeroed out. So really easy to work with, and also just like gives you a lot of confidence when you set this up that everything's ready to go. It's kind of like locked in, zeroed out, and really solid. Only downsides with this, and it's not a big deal for me, but since it is a smaller field camera, it is limited in terms of its movements. I'm often only using like minimal front tilt or minimal front rise, so it's not a huge deal for me. But if you are looking for like a field camera that has a lot of movements, this might not be the right one for you. And then also the front standard and the lens boards are pretty small. I think they're like 80 mil by 80 mil. So a little bit more limited with lens selections, just when it comes to like the rear diameter of the lens. To a degree, like there's still a ton of options out there, but it is something to keep in mind. This isn't going to be like a camera you buy and you can fit anything to. Okay, when it comes to 4x5 lenses, I currently have two. This is probably the one area where like I will add a little bit of gear this year, but the first one is this 150 f5.6. This is a top core by Topcon. And this is like the normal lens that I bought for the system. These were actually made for the Horsemen. You can see the little Horseman logo here. And yeah, I mean, there's a lot of options out there if you're looking for like a 135, 150, 180. And there's not much to say about this other than it's been great. Really sharp. Optically, it seems nice, but it's kind of what you would expect from most standard 4x5 lenses. The second lens I own is one that I'm really enjoying, and I've had this for a couple months. And this is the Fuji 105W f5.6. So I bought this as a wide option, and what's interesting about this lens is that this was actually made for 6x9 for a smaller format as kind of a standard focal length. And this is the CM, which is a later version, but the original version I think had coverage of like 164, which for sure is cutting it very close. Probably stop down at f22, you can maybe get away with no movements. But what's neat is this CM version, Fuji increased the coverage to 175. So still like definitely on the low end for 4x5, but shooting this at f22 and f32, even with movement so far, it seems to perform just great, sharp edge to edge and no vignetting. Shooting this wide open, there is some vignetting. It's not really why I bought this lens, but it still seemed controllable and workable depending on kind of what you're trying to get out of this. But overall, I like the 105 focal length as a wide option, and nice having this speed as a 5.6 for a wider lens for composing. Okay, so moving on to accessories for 4x5. There's a couple main ones that I'm going to touch on, but the first and my favorite is this Reflex finder. And this is by a company called Shenhao. I'm sure a lot of you have heard of Shenhao. And this is something that I bought recently and I have really enjoyed. So it essentially has a mirror inside. It flips the image back upright so it's not upside down, and then it increases magnification by I think 2 times. So basically when you're looking through this, you just have a corrected image, not side to side, but up to down. And it's just this really large kind of view of the ground glass. So it makes composing on 4x5 for me so much more enjoyable. And you also don't have to use a dark cloth. And then it also mounts on the back here, and it kind of swings out of the way. So it's really nice. You can still kind of jump under the dark cloth if you want with a loop to check critical focus. Only downside obviously is camera height. You're a bit limited because you still have to be able to, get to a position where you can look down when you're composing, but something that is worth working with. And the second thing, and I actually might sell this, I'm undecided, but before I bought the Reflex finder, I bought this Horseman zoom finder. And Horseman made a bunch of accessories for the 45 FA. So this actually just slides on the top of the camera like that. And it has a bunch of different kind of popular focal lengths with a 4x5 mask. So this is nice if you're trying to just get like a rough idea of your framing, if you're setting up camera, or of course, you can pop it off the camera and just walk around with this. And it's nice for just kind of visualizing when you're in the field. Okay, so now I'm gonna jump into just like a few essential accessories, things that I use quite often. So first up is my light meter. This is the Sekonic L558R. I've had this for like 4 years now. Can't see myself upgrading probably ever. I'll use this until it stops working. But what I really like about this is it gives you an incident meter and then also a 1 degree spot meter. So a lot of versatility. For landscape photography, it's nice. Some situations I'll use the incident meter if it's like a low contrast scene. And then obviously the spot meter is great for just metering like more complex situations or when you have really distant landscapes. And really nice features. So this has like an averaging function where you can lock in like your lowest brightness value and your highest brightness value, and it'll give you kind of like a middle ground. So I'd recommend this. This has been replaced buy probably a bunch of newer models. This is quite old. So if you can find one of the 5.58s, I don't know what they go for nowadays, but you know, maybe they're starting to become a good deal. Okay, so next up is a tripod I'm using, and this is actually one piece of gear that I upgraded last year after using my previous tripod for like 13 years. And I decided to go with the Gitzo. I went with the GT4543 LS. And this is obviously like a pretty beefy tripod. It's not the smallest one, but I wanted something that could handle kind of whatever I throw at it when it comes to size and weight. And still, you know, even though it is big, you know, I hike with this thing, often with another tripod as well for video, and the weight of it still isn't that bad. So I've really enjoyed this so far. Obviously, Gitzo is one of the more expensive brands out there. My thinking is I'm gonna invest in this now, and hopefully this will last me, you know, twice as long as my previous tripod. And yeah, other than that, not much to say about it. I mean, it's a tripod, it's carbon fiber, it feels really solid, everything feels really precise and kind of what you would expect. Been happy with this one, but I will say my previous tripod was by a company called Benro. This is quite a bit more affordable compared to the Gitzo, and a little bit smaller as well. But this thing I had for like 12 or 13 years. I really didn't take the best care of it. I put it in all sorts of different conditions, and it held up really well. To be honest, probably needs like a new lock washer, maybe like a little bit of maintenance to these leg locks, but this thing would still go on for years as well. You know, if you don't want to spend money on something like a Gitzo, if you're in the market for a tripod, I would definitely recommend Benro. I've been happy with them. And Duro is another company that I think is maybe related to Benro, and their stuff has been good for me as well in the past on the video side of things. So yeah, don't necessarily need to spend this much money. This one worked great for me as well. And then the head I'm using, I bought this separately when I bought those Benro legs. I just swapped to this. This is by a company called Markins. This is their Q10 ball head, and it's been awesome. It has nice little precise adjustment if you're doing like micro adjustments with your composition. Quality wise, just like those Benro legs, this has held up to a lot over the years, and it's still kicking. So no plans to get rid of this, although I may buy a 3-way tilt head for 4x5, because a ball head can be a little bit awkward, but it's still, you know, completely workable at the moment. So Markins, I would suggest looking into one of these if you want like a higher quality ball head, still reasonably affordable, and something that seems very, very durable. Okay, and that brings us to the last thing we're gonna talk about, ever exciting world of bags. I have two that I've been working with for a long time now. First one is this Domke F1, featured this in a video a couple of years ago. And this is just a nice shoulder bag, obviously has quite a bit of room for gear. I'll often put like a 4x5 kit in here with lenses and film holders and dark cloth. And this is all canvas, and it's just, yeah, solid. These bags have been around forever, and they're pretty low key, and I just like it. I'll use this when I'm traveling by car, just doing little short walks and stuff. But my main backpack is this one here. I did a video about this bag a little while ago. This is by a German company called Companion. This is their Element, and I've loved this thing. It's fit my style of working really well. Obviously, often like hiking out big distances, carrying tons of gear, video and photography, 4x5 or 6x7. So this has been nice, super durable, like the strap system with the waist straps and the shoulder straps, lots of like adjustability, really secure. And this thing I'm often hiking with fully loaded, and it's been super comfortable just in any conditions. Zips open from the back, can hold a 4x5 kit, can hold 6x7, video gear, all sorts of things. But then one of my favorite features is this roll top. So this is almost like a dry bag style, where you can fill this up. I'll usually put in like jackets or other layers or anything I want to keep dry, and then in the front pocket I'll put like first aid kit and some like emergency stuff for when I'm out hiking by myself. So this is one that I'm going to keep essentially until it falls apart, which will probably be quite a while. Okay, so that pretty much wraps up the main kits that I'm using. Like I said at the start, this is stuff that I've built up over a number of years, and it's just tools that fit my way of working. That's really what matters most to me, is that it's just comfortable to use and that it kind of performs and meets like the technical needs that I have. Other than that, I could really care less about brands and specifically what things are. So been happy with all this. Hope this little overview gives you some insight into what I'm using, and maybe introduces you to a tool that could help you out for your own work. Other than that though, just want to say thanks. I'll talk to you soon.